The woman quietly cut through the rope securing the raft, then glanced up at her husband with a hint of guilt. Fortunately, he didn't notice anything unusual and simply stepped inside. The raft drifted forward along the rushing current, and as the waters ahead grew increasingly violent, her heart climbed into her throat. Suddenly, a massive wave crashed over them, sweeping her husband straight into the river. It was exactly what she had planned, but to her frustration, the man proved unbelievably resilient. He clung desperately to the edge of the raft, shouting for help. With no other choice, the woman reached out to pull him back, but at that exact moment, another wave struck, sending her into the river instead. As her consciousness began to fade, she saw her husband swimming toward her without hesitation. In the end, the two of them were rescued together. That night, they went to a bar to celebrate surviving the ordeal. Liv appeared overjoyed on the surface, but deep down, she was already plotting how to kill her husband. Early the next morning, she finally found what seemed like the perfect opportunity. She led him to the edge of a cliff to take photos. Will hesitated for a moment, but eventually stepped into the most dangerous position. Liv quietly moved behind him, ready to act. But just as she made up her mind, an old woman suddenly appeared, abruptly ruining her plan. Frustration and resentment surged within her, and the urge to kill her husband became impossible to suppress. Late that night, as everything fell silent, Liv stared at Will lying beside her, her mind racing with different ways to kill him. She thought about smashing his head with a rock when he wasn't paying attention, or scattering food in the wild to lure a grizzly bear, or even distracting him while he was driving to cause an accident. But every plan either had too many flaws or put her own life at risk. No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't settle on a perfect method. That changed during a camping trip. A strikingly attractive woman approached them, and Will's eyes immediately shifted with unease. He awkwardly explained that she was just a colleague from another department. Liv remained calm on the surface, but inside, she was burning with rage. She recognized this woman as the one who had destroyed her marriage. Liv had once believed she was in a perfect, happy relationship, admired by everyone around them. But everything changed one Christmas Eve. While her husband was in the shower and missed a phone call, Liv picked up his phone and accidentally saw a flirtatious message. In that moment, it felt as if her entire world had collapsed. Will insisted it was nothing more than a harmless workplace interaction. After repeated assurances, Liv chose to believe him, even convincing herself that it had just been a moment of weakness. But during this trip, she accidentally checked his laptop and found countless emails from the same sender, filled with intimate messages and even videos of the two of them together. From that moment on, something inside Liv completely snapped. In order to build what she believed was a happy family, Liv had given up a high-paying career and willingly become a housewife, only to be repaid with betrayal. What made it even more cruel was that the other woman now appeared right in front of her, even bringing along her own boyfriend. On the surface, it looked like a coincidence, but in reality, it felt more like a deliberate show of superiority. Suppressing the fury inside her, Liv continued traveling with the three of them. She walked ahead, while behind her, her husband and Kara exchanged subtle glances and gestures. The more she saw, the stronger her desire to kill became. Slowing her pace, Liv deliberately struck up a conversation with Kara's boyfriend. From his reactions, it was obvious. He had no idea he was being deceived. As evening approached, the group arrived at a lakeside. Kara deliberately removed her jacket, showing off her figure. Will claimed he needed to use the restroom, but his eyes kept drifting back toward her. Before Liv could make a move, Kara rushed over first, acting even more concerned than Liv herself. Forcing down her anger, Liv pretended not to notice, silently watching the performance between the two of them. On the way back, Liv casually asked Kara what she thought of her husband. Kara immediately sensed the hostility, and her response carried an edge of provocation. That answer ignited Liv's competitive instinct. After all, she had once been a formidable presence in the workplace. There was no way she would lose to someone like this. Back at the hotel, the two women exchanged sharp, veiled remarks. Deep down, they both already knew the truth, they just hadn't said it out loud. Will also sensed that something was wrong. Once they returned to their room, he finally lost his composure and warned Liv to stay away from Kara. He feared that if the two women got too close, his secret would be exposed. That was the breaking point. Liv could no longer hold it in and directly confronted him about his affair with Kara. Will, humiliated and angry, lashed out, claiming it was Liv's dullness that had driven him to seek someone else. It was a devastating blow. Facing his wife's rising fury, Will grabbed a red raincoat from the table and stormed out, forgetting his phone behind. At that exact moment, Kara sent another message. She wanted to meet Will in secret. That was all it took. Liv could no longer suppress her rage. Braving the heavy rain, she went to the meeting spot. From a distance, she saw her husband standing there in the red raincoat. Her eyes filled with cold hatred. She tore off the necklace from around her neck, rushed forward, and shoved him with all her strength. The next morning, Liv woke up from a heavy hangover. The memory of pushing her husband off the cliff the night before hit her all at once, and her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. Forcing herself to calm down, she started packing her things, desperate to leave this place as quickly as possible. Before leaving, she even stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing over and over again. If the police came knocking, she would need the perfect excuse. But at that exact moment, a knock sounded at the door. Liv hurried over, and the instant she opened it, she froze. Standing outside was her husband. No matter how hard she tried to process it, she couldn't understand how Will was still alive. If that was the case, then who had she pushed off the cliff last night? After coming inside, Will seemed much calmer. He assumed his wife was still angry and kept apologizing, saying he had only spoken harshly because he was drunk. After leaving, he had spent the entire night sleeping at a bar. Liv kept her composure on the surface, but inside, her thoughts were in complete chaos. Then, a terrifying realization struck her. If Will was alive, then the person she had pushed off the cliff must have been someone else. Most likely, Kara, the woman her husband was secretly meeting. With that thought in mind, Liv rushed out of the hotel. Sure enough, she saw Kara's boyfriend anxiously making phone calls, clearly in a panic. Pretending to know nothing, Liv approached him and asked what had happened. That was when she learned that Kara hadn't returned all night, and none of her calls were going through. In desperation, her boyfriend had already contacted the police. Liv's heart sank to the bottom. Her worst fear had become reality. When she returned to her room, she saw Will frantically calling around, trying to find Kara. The urgency in his voice made him seem even more concerned than her actual boyfriend. The tension inside Liv slowly shifted into something darker, resentment, even a twisted sense of satisfaction. But the moment she saw a large group of police mobilizing, panic surged back again. If any evidence pointed to her, she would be finished. Replaying the events of the night in her mind, Liv suddenly remembered a fatal mistake. Her necklace might have been left at the scene. Without hesitation, she dragged her husband along and joined the search team. The two of them arrived at the site ahead of the others. At a glance, Liv spotted the necklace lying right at Will's feet. Without missing a beat, she threw herself forward, grabbing onto his leg under the pretense of checking him for injuries, while secretly retrieving the necklace. But before she could even feel relieved, news came from the search team. They had found Kara at the bottom of the cliff, and she was still alive. A wave of dizziness washed over Liv. It seemed her attempted murder was about to be exposed. The only question left was whether Kara had seen her face clearly. In that moment, Liv had already begun preparing for the worst. When Liv finally gathered the courage to visit the hospital, she was told that Kara had suffered a head injury and lost her memory. She couldn't recall anything that had happened before. Hearing this, the weight on Liv's chest lifted halfway. But the doctor also warned that as her body recovered, her memory could return at any time. The brief relief quickly turned into anxiety again. For now, Liv didn't dare to take any risks. She could only keep herself busy with intense daily exercise, trying to stop her mind from spiraling. One morning, just after finishing her run, Liv suddenly received shocking news. Kara had died in her hospital bed. The fragile calm she had been holding on shattered instantly. There was a trace of relief on her face, but what dominated was an uncontrollable sense of joy. After forcing herself to calm down, Liv hurried back to the hotel, only to find the police already there, conducting an investigation. She began rehearsing her story in her mind, but before she could act, Will suddenly pulled her aside. His expression was unusually serious as he admitted that he had been having an ongoing affair with Kara. Yet, he claimed this didn't change his true love for Liv. Now that Kara was gone, he believed they could return to their happy life together. Inside, Liv cursed him over and over again, but outwardly, she remained calm, waiting to hear what he really wanted. With the police investigating Kara's death, Will feared their relationship would inevitably come to light, making him the prime suspect. He asked Liv to provide him with an alibi, because on the night of the incident, he had secretly met Kara, and after they parted, he had stayed alone at a bar. Without proof, he had no way to clear his name. Hearing this, Liv couldn't help but laugh out loud. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing her husband reduced to pleading like this. At the same time, she realized this could also help clear her own suspicion. In the end, the two of them aligned their stories. When questioned by the police, Will claimed he had returned to his room after drinking at the bar, and Liv lied without the slightest hesitation. And just like that, they managed to get away with it. The police ruled Kara's death an accident. She had simply slipped and fallen off the cliff. Life between the couple seemed to return to normal, but the cracks in their marriage were beyond repair. Liv forced herself to try and forgive. Life had to go on, and at one point, they had truly loved each other. There were even moments when she considered having a child. But the fragile peace they tried so hard to maintain was shattered by her mother's unexpected visit. By chance, her mother had discovered several explicit photos of Will, and the woman in those photos was not Kara, which meant there was yet another mistress. Realizing that her husband had betrayed her again and again, the murderous intent that had once been buried inside Liv resurfaced. This time, she made up her mind. She would push this man into complete ruin. That's the story of the first part of Wilderness. After watching so many zombie and monster stories, a revenge thriller like this brings a different kind of intensity. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share your thoughts. If the response is good, the story will continue all the way to the finale.